Hi, welcome back to Ideas Box. I'm Jimmy, and in today's video I'm going to look at a new modification I've done to my compressor to bleed off the water from the bottom of the compressor, which can be quite dangerous if it's left to build up to the point where the compressor tank itself gets rusty. It's a much more of an update than the last video I did, which was a manual blow off. So anywho, let's get into it. So the way I've got this set up is when the compressor comes on, it powers the transformer, which gives me 12 volts to the unit here. So then the unit comes on. There's a little red LED comes on there. The unit comes on, and then after this timer here, so there's two rheostats. This rheostat sets the time that the relay will be on. So there's your relay there. This rheostat sets the time the relay will be on, and this rheostat here just sets the time that it cycles between on and off. So I've left, because this is on single, that rheostat's basically not doing anything. So the compressor comes on, powers up the transformer, you get 12 volts to this unit here. After the set duration of the timer comes on, so this relay comes on, and then you get your 12 volts through your relay to your pneumatic valve. So your pneumatic valve opens for the duration of this timer here. This timer here goes for about 4 seconds. After 4 seconds, the relay shuts off, the pneumatic valve closes, and then your compressor builds up pressure. This will only on for about 4 seconds, so it shouldn't really hurt the efficiency of the compressor too much. So that'll come on for 4 seconds, and then once that goes off, the compressor builds up the pressure, and then once the power shuts off from the compressor and shuts off the motor, it de-energizes this transformer. Whatever time later after you've used the compressor, and the pressure switch in the compressor comes back on and then powers up the motor, it powers up the transformer again, and the whole cycle starts again. Your relay opens, blows off 4 seconds of air to get the water out of the tank, and then that closes, and then your compressor just goes back to being a normal compressor. And then after whatever amount of time it takes to build up the pressure, it shuts the compressor off and de-energizes this transformer. The advantage of this system is you haven't got a transformer sitting there drawing power and getting hot all the time. The transformer is only energized when the motor comes on, and I think that's the advantage of this system. So I'll turn the transformer on. So that's mimicking the compressor being turned on. So the compressor in essence is now pumping up the pressure. When the compressor gets the pressure, shuts off the power to the transformer, and now the transformer is de-energized, so it's not using any extra power. The whole unit is just sitting there completely inert. Half an hour later, or after a bit of use, the compressor turns on again. It stops draining the water out of the bottom of the tank, and then 15-20 seconds later, whatever, the compressor turns off again. So that's a proof of concept. I think that's how it's going to work. So I'll make that all into a nice little module that I can mount on the side of the tank, probably here, probably off of one of these wing nuts, to be honest. And we'll see how that goes. I think it'll work fine. And what I'm going to do though, I'm going to mount this valve up high so that any moisture that is in the line will sit below the valve, and the valve should stay fairly dry. So that's the theory anyway. So I'm going to open this up and see if there's an easier way to connect the 240 volts rather than have an external plug. I'll just put that in there. Got my little Dremel tool. Well, it's not actually a Dremel, but they're called a Dremel tool, aren't they? Sort of a generic thing. So I'm just going to open this up and see what's inside this, because I actually haven't cut one of these apart before. Get a small screwdriver and just pop that open and see what we're up against inside. I don't know if that is going to pop open. What am I? Oh, there we go. Oh, it's just some of the molten plastic. Dremel tools, because they're quite high speed, they tend to melt the plastic out of the way. Ah, here we go. This is easy. Look at this. I can just connect my wires onto there. Easy peasy. Right, I'll get my soldering iron. Actually, no, I won't. I'll just snip them. Where's my snippers? Here they are. I'll just snip those wires. Easy peasy Japanesey. Right, so I'll connect my 240 to that, and being AC it won't make much difference, and then I can use this to provide my 12 volts for my timer. So we'll just tidy this little bit here up and we'll see how we go. There we go. Now it's a flat face there, so I can mount that on a board. I'll just knock those filings out. I'll probably blow them out. I can connect my wires to them. I can connect my wires to that for the 240 from the compressor switch, and then I think we're in business. So those wires connect to the 240 volts. The transformer comes on, activates the relay, activates the timer. It's already triggered, and it should activate the air valve. So let's go and see if that works, shall we? So I'll take the cover off the switch. That's just a single Phillips head screw, and I'll check, just double check that there's no power. Yep, oh, hang on, mode, AC, here we go. Yep, that's good. Okay, cool. So once again, there's the wiring to the pressure switch, which looks a bit dodgy, but it's actually not too bad. There's the transformer. There's the module, and when the power comes on, the red LED will come on, and the green one comes on almost instantly. And after 4 seconds, the green one goes off because it's closed that relay. And in that 4 seconds, it's blowing air out of here. So we'll film all them individually over a couple of cycles of compressed air. Okay, so now I'll film the pneumatic valve, and I'll put something in front of it so you can see that it's actually blowing something away. So I'll just chuck that down there. Okay, so we're going to watch that again. And there goes the LED because the transformer took a few seconds to bleed the power down after it got disconnected by the pressure switch. So there it is. I'm pretty happy with that. I'll make that into a nice tidy box, and job done. Today I'm going to tidy up this this little unit here. I'm going to mount all this. I've taken the transformer completely out of the little plug-in wall box thing. I'm going to mount them in there like that, and then this is a little enclosure. This one on my compressor, I'm going to do it with a clear plastic box so I can see the lights flashing, because I like flashing lights. I'm easily impressed. If I make one for somebody else, I'll just use a plain grey one. They're actually, I didn't realise it when I bought them, they're actually the same box. So that lid would fit that one, and that lid would fit that one. They've just got a rubber gasket have to fit that rubber gasket, so that goes in there like that. So the 4 screws go and hold that together. So I'm currently working out the layout for this. I had initially thought that I could shimmy all that over, get all that in there so it's nice and tidy, and put the valve in there also so it's one little unit. But I don't want any moisture in here, and that's going to have moisture passing through it. So I don't want any moisture in there. So I'm just going to simply mount them like that and like that. So it looks nice and tidy. And then I'll mount this on top or on the side or maybe on a plate just there. I really don't know just yet. So we'll get onto that now. I'll have a look at how I'm going to mount this. I'll wire it all up and then we'll run the wires out of there. I've got to put the 240 volt in, probably in through the back, and then those wires out through the back just so it looks a bit tidier. Right, so I've glued them in place. I've got a bit of foam behind the circuit board, so the glue is not directly on the contacts because I don't know if the glue is corrosive or not. The glue is corrosive or not. So that's them glued in place. So here's it wired up. There's the 240 volts comes in, goes to the primary side of the transformer. The secondary side of the transformer, the 12 volts comes out, goes to the control unit, but also goes to the relay switches, and then switches the solenoid in the air valve. The earth to the air valve goes back to the earth side of the DC circuit. So it's actually fairly simple. It looks a bit jumbled up, but it's actually fairly simple. I've put these connectors here in, these 2 connectors. I was going to solder those wires, but they've got connectors there just to facilitate ease of change of the pneumatic valve, which would be unlikely. This is the trigger wire, which I've soldered together and put heat shrink on just to tidy that up. So let's see how that works, shall we? I've redone those connections with blue point connectors, and so here's the timer unit installed on the compressor, so just let me bleed off some air. Okay, so that's that job finished. Nice and tidy. I put some spiral wrap around the 12 volt wires to the solenoid valve. This goes up into there to some blue point connectors. The pneumatic line comes around the back so that it's not in the way of anything. And yeah, you've seen it operate, it works a treat.
Okay, thanks for watching. I hope you liked the video and it gave you an idea for your workshop. Make sure to click like and subscribe, and don't forget that notification bell too. I've recently learned that clicking the like button causes the YouTube algorithm to direct more of this kind of thing to your feed. So if you like this kind of content, then you'd actually be doing yourself a favor by clicking like on not just this video, but any type of video you'd like to see more of. I'd also like to send a shout out to Emmett. He's a big fan of the channel and enjoys watching the content I put up. Well, I reckon that's it for today, so bye for now.